You're all very welcome to this event today, Navigating Article 117. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. You're very, very welcome to this session. So let me start and continue. So really, as I've said, this is the welcome and introduction. I'm Teresa Geary. I'm the global head of the medicinal and biologics team at BSI. I'm based in Ireland, and I have over 30 years experience working in both the pharmaceutical world. So I am a formulation scientist by training, and I have developed many, many products in this space. Little did I know the impacts that the MDR would have ultimately on those delivery devices for medicinal products. So a lot of experience within the team as well in delivering these opinions, and really, we want to share our experience with you and hear from you as well throughout the session. So please use the chat, the Q&As for any questions you have, and we'll have time at the end of this to answer them in real time. But also, we'll take away any questions you raise. If we don't get to all of them today, we will come back to you after the event and answer your questions. So let's begin. I really want to understand and hear from you. So Faizan, can you launch the poll, please? So have you obtained an Article 117 notified body opinion for your medicinal product? And a nice simple question to start with. It's either a yes or a no at this stage of your development. So if you can vote, that would be great. Faizan, whenever you want to. Stop the poll and give us the results. Just for the guys in the back room, I'm not seeing the results of the poll, so I don't know if it's closed. Ah, here we go. There we go. So 80% yes, that's fantastic. So lots of experience in the room. Looking forward to hearing back from you. And then 20% there's no. I have another question then. So let's launch the second question. That seems to be the first one again.
Yes, sir. All other questions are there in the queue. They can respond while clicking on the next question.
Perfect. That's fine. Thank you, Faizan, for that. This is just to give me a feel for the audience today and understand your level of knowledge with Article 117. And Faizan, when the results are in, could you maybe just share them back with me, please? So yes, the other questions are around understanding the length of time to gain the opinions, and also if you're planning to do it anymore. Okay, less than 6 months. Very good for about half of the audience. Some have had over 12 months and under. So that 12-month time point seems to be equally split, which is quite interesting. And then just finally, are you planning to obtain new opinion in the next 12 months? Yes, 75%. So fantastic, a really important area of growth. Absolutely, we see this and understand this. So there's lots of activity in this sector. Thanks, Faizan. So hopefully I can continue now and just continue on with the presentation. That gives me a great, thank you for all your interaction on that one. That gives me a nice overview of where we are. So in terms of session, this gives a nice overview of kind of the legal context of where we are with Article 117. So MDR, Article 18 to Article 19 talks about devices that administer medicinal products. So on one side, some of them in that first paragraph talks about the medical devices. They're empty, they're provided maybe, you know, co-packaged with a medicinal product, but they are empty. They're medical devices, as we all know. And the really important area is these. Yes?
You need to share your screen, please.
Okay, sorry. The polls knock it out. Apologies for this. So back to the session focus. And like I said, you know, the medicinal product area is where we are. Single integral products, they're intended exclusively for that use in the given combination, and it's not reusable. So let's move on to the first part of this and understanding Article 117 under the MDR. Really small, simple paragraph here. You know, just 2 paragraphs in this Article 117. And what did Article 117 do? It amended the Medicinal Products Directive, and it spoke about conformity of the device part against the general safety and performance requirements would be needed, or an opinion needed from a notified body. Those 2 small paragraphs, though, really resulted in a key way of working, key change in the ways of working. So under the MDD, you will have all been familiar with that. You were submitting your marketing authorization application directly to the competent authority. And, you know, MDD also said, and the MDD is the Medical Devices Directive that preceded the Medical Device Regulation. In that document, in that legal text, it was stated that those types of products for the device part, the Annex 1 essential requirements needed to be met. So there was always this link back to the device legislation, but you know, there was nothing told about that. It was a nice straightforward process for pharma companies at that stage. What the MDR process has brought in is this new stakeholder, if you like, in the process, where a notified body needs to assess and provide opinions for these types of products. So again, a key way in changing, and you know that review process, as some of you have already shared, it can be more than 12 months. So lots to consider in terms of delivering that as a service. Article 117 products, you know, the product is a medicinal product, single integral, it's not reusable, and it's exclusively for use. So that just gives you a background to that. So why did we change? Why was Article 117 brought in? Certainly, competent authorities I spoke with in this space really had concerns with the gap in legislation for these products. So it was given that, you know, there have been huge advancements in the device area to deliver medicinal products and how they came to market. The MDD, as I've said already, stated that the device part needed to meet the Annex 1 essential requirements, but that text couldn't be found anywhere in the medicinal product legislation, which is always strange. So how would you as a traditional pharma company really know about this essential requirements and what it meant for you? And talking to competent authorities, yes, we had seen certainly some issues with deliverability of dosage forms with these types of systems. And, you know, there were concerns that, you know, what are we expected to look at and review, and what's the depth of our review? And again, from manufacturers, you really might not have ever had questions. You might have provided data in your package of your marketing authorization application to the competent authority, but maybe never saw questions on the device part. So not an ideal situation, but I think, keep in mind, technology has been advancing over the time. What does MDR require, basically? Very, very simply, demonstration and data to support the device part meets the MDR Annex 1 GSPRs that are relevant to your product. And the notified body opinion, so the small paragraph states that it's required as part of the medicinal product application. If the device part itself does not bear the CE mark, or the device part has not got a declaration of conformity with MDR requirements. And that's, a very top level summary of what's required. In scopes are the medicinal products that form an integral part. So your pre-filled syringes, pre-filled injectables, novel pre-filled devices. We are seeing these coming through now, and maybe implantable type systems governed by software, complex systems. These are in scope of Article 117. What's out of scope are any combined ATMPs. They have their own legislation where it is pointed to getting an opinion for these types of systems where they're combined. And the co-packaged devices, medicinal products and cross-labeled, they're not within scope of this. And again, thinking about life and why Article 117, certainly the legislation that governs medical devices is very different to that of medicinal products. I've worked in both fields, so I kind of really understand the differences. Medical devices are governed and assessed on proportional principles. So that's proportional to the risk. We consider risk and we look at that, and the depth of review is governed by the risks associated. Where medicinal products have a precautionary approach and each and every product is assessed. Certainly this doesn't mean the legislation is superior to the other. They are different. I think that's important to remember and just note. And just involving the right expertise in the process of bringing a product to market is probably the key and the most important consideration, hence why Article 117 was introduced. And the other thing to say, and I say this from practical experience of working in both spaces, I moved from pharma into the medical device sector, and honestly, we do speak different languages between the two. I easily spent the first year of my life in a medical device company just trying to understand what people were saying to me and what they were requesting. So Mars and Venus is very true. And when we speak sort of different languages or using the same words but having different meanings, things often get lost in translation, and that's really important to consider and understand when you're developing products in this space as well. We don't always say the same things or mean the same things when we say words that are similar. Now, moving on to the key regulatory requirements and when a notified body is required. I've given some nice examples here. So you'll see both these are dry powder inhalers. One is single integral, absolutely. The blister pack inside that is exclusively for use in that application, and it's not reusable. So that's kind of given. Whereas on the other side, we have, this product, and it's not really single integral because you can see the medicinal product is there in capsule form. You could say maybe it is exclusively for use, but it's certainly not reusable. So we do see differences of when one is required opposed to the other. In terms of multi-dose injections, again, the auto-injector pen, one side, you can clearly see it's single integral, it's exclusively for use and it's not reusable. Whereas the other example, the medicinal product is supplied separately to this auto-injector pen. So in this case, Article 117 wouldn't be appropriate or applicable. And I'm going to give you another example of a pre-filled syringe that contains a dermal filler product and local anesthetic pain relief drug. And in terms of this, quite borderline, it looks like the pre-filled syringe. That's what it looks like. But, you need to consider and think about what is the product and what's the purpose. So it is a device that has a physical action and it's supported in an ancillary way by the medicinal product. The action of that medicinal substance in there is ancillary. It's a dermal filler. It's going to fill a facial void, and Article 117 in this case doesn't apply. So, these are medical devices. So complexities in the system absolutely do exist. Moving on now, and knowing that many of you have got opinions, you'll have some experience of this, what a notified body and what its role is in the process. So a notified body, very, very simply, they're an organization, usually companies that decide they're going to offer conformity assessment services, and they're designated by an EU country to perform that service, and they carry out processes. So we're designated by a designating authority in Europe, which is a competent authority for devices in Europe, in our case, to be able to provide this as a service. The roles, very, very simply, you're manufacturing compliance against legislation. In the case of many notified bodies, they issue C certification against that legislation. But we range in size and scope as well. Notified bodies are not government agencies, and many people forget this, but mostly private sector companies. So it is a decision or a standards company to set up and become and seek designation as a notified body. The company can choose its notified body, providing they have expertise in that area. So that's also an important consideration. And the fees vary, and the quality of submission does affect the cost. So normally you will hear us talking about 3 rounds of questions as a maximum to get an opinion or to provide the opinion. The more questions you have to ask, the more time that is needed to assess and come to a conclusion. And I've given a link in the slides here to Nando, which provides a list of designated notified bodies against the MDR, and that gives you links to that useful resource. In terms of notified bodies for medical devices, they're designated conformity assessment bodies against the MDR, and we're required to have sufficient knowledge, expertise and experience in the devices we assess. So, our continual education and keeping up to date with state of the art is so important to any employees within a notified body. And we have to be in a member state, or we can be in third countries with which the union has an agreement. So there are some Turkish notified bodies, for example, out there. And again, providing you links to help you. Just in terms of BSI, very full scope. So we do cover an awful lot. And the medicinal and biologics team are the area where we have put Article 117 due to our background in the pharmaceutical industry and knowledge, as well as device side of life. Time to hear from you again. So Faizan, I'll let you launch the poll if that's okay. And this question I wanted to know is, so you have many considerations when you're selecting a notified body to obtain an opinion. So can you share with me, please, what's really important considerations in making that decision? And Faison, just wondering if the results are through. Okay, thank you for all the responses. That's fantastic. So yeah, time, and I agree with you. Time and understanding the expectations, I would say, are important. Notified bodies are service providers, and certainly for me, when I think about the service offering I'm responsible for, it is understanding that you are under pressure for your marketing authorization application, and understanding and having predictability in that process is so key and critical to the success of your product development. So thank you for that. And let me share my screen again. Thank you. So documentation. I have to be honest, this is probably the one biggest area, the most questions we get, and that's absolutely fine and completely understandable. Notified bodies are new players in this, and for us, to provide this service, our day job is reviewing devices. So it's like, how much information, guys, do you want to see, in what format? To help with this, we did publish some best practice guidelines, and we've broken it down by all the different GSPRs and what our expectations are to help with that process. So hopefully this is a useful resource to manufacturers. Now I'm going to go back and put simply, what does Article 117 need? It needs us to evaluate your evidence that you provide that demonstrates that device part is going to meet the MDR Annex 1 general safety and performance requirements. And, chapter 1 of that, GSPRs is about general requirements that covers most devices. Chapter 2 goes into design and manufacture. So those are the GSPRs 10 to 22. And chapter 3 is information that's supplied with the device. They're written very much specifically for medical devices, but they're quite practical and pragmatic, and they think about safety and considerations in manufacture and what do you tell the end user about this device. So they are very, very pragmatically written, I think is fair to say. And I've just broken them out here. Not all GSPRs will be absolutely relevant to you, and if not, just say not applicable and just give a reason why. And it could be, you haven't got a material of biological origin in there, and that's fine. So long as we understand that you've worked through this and evaluated what GSPRs are essential to you, and what you have identified, and why, and then pointing us to the evidence is the key. In terms of documentation expectations as well, you're telling a story. It's very similar to your CTD for your medicinal product. You are telling the story to a notified body who's a third party who doesn't understand your product, really why you have this evidence that meets these GSPRs. So it's a roadmap document, if you like. Having a comprehensive GSPR checklist that points us to where all the evidence is and all the reports that are in there is fantastic. That really helps us as assessors to navigate through, and for it to be searchable as well. So there will be many, many different areas that you'll have evidence located within your file. And we also work very much with Team NB on a position paper just to sort of clarify and get uniformity between notified bodies as well on this process. In terms of Article 117 documentation, Annex 2, the MDR is our day job. It's what we work to. And really, general safety and performance requirements is spoken about in Annex 2, which talks about technical documentation for medical devices. But it does also say it includes a justification, validation and verification of the solutions that you've adopted to meet requirements. So just consider that as well. You're allowed to make justifications for the approaches taken, and then what validation verification data have you got to support your claims of compliance to that GSPR. In terms of documentation learning points, just as a top level here, certainly having that checklist is perfect. That identifies what's applicable and it gives justifications where not. It also points to the methods that have been used to demonstrate conformity, and you can use harmonized standards or common specification, or you might have your own state-of-the-art solutions as well to show why you meet a GSPR. You don't have to use harmonized standards. They just give a presumption of conformity, so they help you when you do claim to have met a harmonized standard and use that as part of your evaluation, your evidence. And, the GSPR checklist is also fantastic to give traceability of that evidence. Underneath that, there'll be top-level summary reports, and they're from the marketing authorization applicant or holder. You're in control of the product ultimately, and there might be some top-level summaries as well from any subcontractors and suppliers. And then underneath that, sometimes we might ask to see more data, or you might wish to just provide more detailed report and data that support the top-level summaries. Again, the guidance document that we have published, best practice guidance, that will go into a lot more details. In terms of the notified body opinion process then, very difficult to kind of put it all into one, but this was the best way seen. Up front, you're going to be engaging with the sales team, the commercial team at the notified body, who are going to pull together a quotation for what you want and understanding, and want to spend time with you to understand what your need is and what your timelines are. And we also have contract reviews. And one thing we have seen that sometimes does take a little bit more time is that some suppliers do require non-disclosure agreements to be in place, and that can be three-way agreements, and we're more than happy to do that to support your needs. So yeah, sometimes they do happen and sometimes they're forgotten about, and we're ready to go with reviews, but somebody then says, oh, I need an NDA. That's fine, we will work with you to get that as soon as possible. And then we get into the technical documentation as provided by you. We have upfront meetings with new applicants to talk through what our processes look like, because obviously, we have processes, systems in place, our own terminology as well, which is a bit annoying sometimes, but you can discuss with us what your plans are and we can agree and work through how this is going to look. And for Article 117, we project manage as well. So there's a project management team who support the technical people to make sure all of these assessments are planned and mapped out in full to meet and give that predictability in process. So obviously we will pick up and start our review, and there can be questions. And really, as I've said at the bottom there's two service levels that we offer. We have a standard service where the assessment is done remotely desktop by somebody and just planned in, and we plan in all the review stages, giving you some time to answer any questions that arise. Or our dedicated service is very much an interactive service where on a Teams call, you will meet the assessment team. They will ask questions throughout the day and look for evidence throughout the day. And we found that works really, really very, very efficiently because you can get through and get right into the weeds, if you like, of the technical documentation without the need for many rounds of questions. You are, if all points are not closed at the end of that assessment time period, you can submit responses in a written format as well. That's absolutely fine. So whatever works for your organisation, we will try and accommodate. In terms of then, once all that's done, we close everything out, and you have a scheme manager who looks after your file, pulls together the final report, sends that report to you as a manufacturer for your review before we sign off, and then there's an independent review at the end of the process. And then once that is concluded successfully, the notified body opinion report is summarized out to you. You know, the timelines that we're seeing for the standard service, it's certainly less than 90 calendar days, and for dedicated, we've had some great successes there, and we've seen sort of the average is less than 45 calendar days, and we've seen much shorter timelines as well. Again, depending on the readiness of the applicant in those cases. So it does work very, very efficiently, and efficiencies are gained for both parties, for you, the applicant as well, because you can have your team ready and you know when the questions are coming and you know when the reviews are going to happen. So that's the process. And then ultimately the report, this is the important thing that you need for your marketing authorization. You know, it's a nice, clear report that summarizes what's been looked at, and it's also to give your confidence to the competent authority what we've reviewed, and you know, just very clear statements on conformity to GSPRs, and any gaps are made clear. In terms of common challenges then, and how to address them, there's quite a few, and I've identified them from what we normally do see. So supplier information is one big one that we see common challenges. And you know, device parts are usually manufactured by a third-party supplier, and then that supplier has a lot of documentation on the device part, and use the marketing authorization holder. You know, you're reliant very much on information that comes in from that supplier. So, you know, things like where companies have good supplier control and agreements in place are well defined. For intellectual property and proprietary information, we often hear this as well. Supplier data can be sent directly to the notified body. That's absolutely not an issue. And again, I've said non-disclosure agreements are quite common as well. So sometimes we might ask a question where it's proprietary information. That's fine. We can have that relationship with the supplier to gain that information and not break that cause an issue there. However, I will say, just consider when you are using these third-party suppliers, ultimately it's the marketing authorization holder who's responsible for that product as a whole, for that combination as a whole. So just be mindful of that in terms of controlling those guys. Sometimes we've seen very, very strange, you know, lack of understanding of when a notified body opinion is required, and sometimes where there is a declaration of conformity or a C certificate for the device on its own right exist, and we have seen competent authorities still requesting of marketing authorization applicants to get a notified body opinion even where this information does exist. So just be mindful of that and have a good communication with your competent authority. And also we've seen applications for notified body opinions with a competent authority letter where the device part is reusable. And again, look, if we're requested to provide an opinion and you can support it with that evidence that this is needed, then we will, of course, do that for you to satisfy the competent authority ask. Technical documentation, just touching on this again because it is important. You know, we just are looking for the evidence and data that demonstrates how the GSPR has been met, and we will drill down to satisfy that need. It's very, very difficult to prescribe all the requirements because there is quite a wide range of devices that we can see. Our technical documentation best practice guidance has tried to do some of that to give different examples, but we want to be pragmatic as well, and we're flexible to allow you to determine what information is needed. One thing to say here, an important challenge really, is that notified bodies and competent authorities often look at the same data set perhaps, I'm thinking sometimes stability trials, things like that, but we're looking at it with different perspectives. So there are differing perspectives coming into play. The notified body will all be about the device and is it safe? Is it going to perform as intended? Whereas the competent authority, obviously, they are the experts in the medicinal product side, so they will have a different perspective and look at, how the device might affect the performance of the drug. So this slide really is around usability actually, and aspects that interacting with device design. So there's a lot of things to think about here in terms of usability, and there's many different factors that affect how a device will be used. The environment in which it's being used. Is it in a ER emergency room where it's quite stressful, or is it in a home environment where it's a calmer space for a patient to use it? And what are the known characteristics of the users and their medical condition? So people with diabetes have differences in tactile feel than sort of maybe a young engineer who's designing the device, and how's the usability and how's that looked at, and what tasks are people being asked to do, and are they going to be doing it with your device, or do they need to interact with other devices as well? So usability is actually a very important factor. Perhaps the second biggest question I get asked is around management of changes. So the marketing authorization holder, you do have in place change management processes. You're expert on that product as a whole, and really what happens if changes are made to the device part, and do I need a new notified body opinion? Again, quite difficult to prescribe. I know EMA published some guidance, and that variation guidance, when it was updated to include some of this, really doesn't go very, very far. It is outside of the remit of the notified body to advise or make to determine on the significance of change, because we're not experts on your product. So make the determination. I know EMA have said they are willing to also support you in this, but just consider, does the change to the device part really significantly impact on the GSPRs and the compliance of those GSPRs? That's probably the number one question. But I think it's very appropriate for manufacturers to, as part of their change management process, have a documented kind of thought process for yes or no to a notified body opinion, a new one. And this is the guidance that EMA have provided where thinking about it. So, again, trying to be pragmatic and putting the best foot forward. And kind of the final sessions, and mindful, we want to give you an opportunity for Q&As. Let's talk about best practices and compliance strategies. And in this, really about preparing robust submissions and common challenges, really. User information actually came out pretty high in our summary when we looked at all the notified body opinions provided and where the questions are raised. And you kind of go, well, why, Teresa, would the notified body want to see this information? I'm thinking about it, what information would you provide as a manufacturer in this space? And do you see any challenges with this? There are plenty, I can assure you. Certainly, I know that, from our perspective, yes, the labelling has to comply with the medicinal product directives and GSPR 23. Though that GSPR really isn't relevant to you, even though it's about user information. It's not relevant. But we often see labelling referenced as evidence of compliance to GSPRs, and then the manufacturer will say, well, you don't need to see the labelling, that's under the remit of the competent authority. Yes, absolutely it is, but if that's the evidence, I do want to just verify why that's then complied or shows safety compliance to a GSPR. So it can be necessary to see labelling relating to the use of the device, the dosing accuracy, and the safety and communication of risks. Questions can be asked, but ultimately it will be the competent authority who makes the decision on labelling. And GSPR 23 really isn't relevant in these. It's a medicinal product, it's regulated as such. But if you are going to say that the label gives you evidence compliance to the GSPR, we will want to see it. And it's just an ask really to verify those aspects. Second on the list of common challenges were around product and design specifications. And again, wondering why on earth do you want to see this? It's a medicinal product. And think about it. What information would you provide in terms of this? And what challenges could exist here? For this one, the notified body wants to see that design requirements have been identified and documented in the intended use, safety and performance requirements and risk assessments. So your medicinal product, you've decided it needs to be delivered in a particular way, can be layperson use. All of that is part of that design, and you've gone through your risk assessments as well, thinking about that. So you've put a lot of thought and effort into what is this product going to look like, and what does this device need to be able to do to meet my overall product requirements. In terms of design information, with respect to that final combination product, the function, the performance, the lifetime, shelf life, packaging, labeling, and usability is expected to be seen. You're telling the story to the notified body of all of these aspects coming together. And we're just really interested in the device part. Again, as I've said, it's there to do something for your medicinal product. How did you get to that point? Number 3 on our list was around manufacturing. And again, I'm going to ask the same questions. Certainly in terms of manufacturing information, this is to identify any special or proprietary processes and any subcontracted processes. We need to understand, how this device part is made, where does it come into play? And, the manufacturer of device parts and information and the assembly of that, including in-process and device-related product testing, again, is building confidence that all of this is in control. And don't forget, Chapter 2 of the Annex 1 GSPRs talks about, the manufacturing processes involved. So we're interested in understanding those aspects. The next one is shelf life, and this does come up quite frequently. Again, shelf life. Shelf life of what? It's a medicinal product. What's the notified body looking for? What challenges are there? So the stability of the medicinal product as a whole, it's under the remit of the competent authority. However, stability of the device components is required for GSPR 7. So it talks about the device part needing to be stable. And does the drug actually have an impact on it? And really what we're looking for is evidence that supports the device function related aspects of the final product only. And if you can provide stability protocols and reports, fantastic. It's usually what we're looking for. And you can justify the shelf life of that device part with reference to accelerated data. That's absolutely acceptable. And obviously we understand and appreciate, shelf life and your stability normally is a final part of your product development. But yeah, just consider that. So you often kind of go, you don't really need to see real-time data on the device part here. I need to get my opinion from you before I submit the full package to the competent authority. Timelines are so important here. The next one was risk management. And again, just working through this, what we do expect to see is a thorough design and process risk management assessment. And that's for the entire life cycle of the device, from that initial design concept up and to including disposal. So all of those are very important, and I've listed the appropriate GSPRs. Any risks, how have you assessed them, mitigated them and reduced them? And have appropriate controls, design them out, been applied to all the risks if you can. And do risk mitigation, sometimes they do introduce new risks. And finally, clinical. Again, clinical often comes up at conferences and discussions. So I'm going to say in most cases, and the BSI position is that, clinical evaluation is not needed. The medicinal product is what's having the action on the body. The device is just there to deliver that. So we do not expect to see clinical evaluation reports submitted. But if there are claims made about the device part, so less painful injections perhaps, or if the device is implanted, we have had some where it is implanted and the device part was then resorbed over time, then we would expect to see some data about why that device is going to be safe for implantation over time. And the manufacturer provided a fantastic package of information there. Yeah, if needed, data to support the safety and performance claims made for the device part. So nearly at the end here, time to hear from you, but first of all, just some conclusions on implementation. So it has been, so BSI, we issued our first opinion, and it was back in 20th of January 2020. So before the Article 117 requirement came into play formally. And that seems like a million years ago now, 6 years. And certainly over 250 notified body opinions issued for over 70 companies. The majority are in that pre-filled syringes auto-injector space, and we are beginning to see more applications of the on-body dosing systems coming through and more complex systems, as I've indicated to you. We've had limited feedback on the notified body opinion reports to date. We've had some discussions with Swissmedic, and they've been very useful. But we are actively involved in Team NB working groups and in EMA discussions. And also I'm a member of the Combo operational group, and I've put a link in there. So this is a European Commission EMA initiative to bring together notified bodies, competent authorities, designating authorities to write guidance for manufacturers in this space. And Article 117 is very high on our priority list. And looking at, are there efficiencies we can build into the system, and is there too much overlap perhaps in what's assessed? So keep an eye on the website for the Combo operational group. So work is happening in the background, and manufacturers will be invited at some point in the future to some of those meetings, those Combo meetings. Improvements, to me, it was all about improving. We had a starting point in 2020. We learned, and we have learned so much over that time in terms of assessments and how we can work better and what's important to manufacturers. To me, communications and expectations and predictability of the service are really key. And I think the timelines for me are the most important thing to be able to deliver a predictable service to manufacturers in this space. So yes, publishing guidance has been key. Having point contacts, implementing systems internally to project manage these types of applications has been very important. And having a dedicated team that can support in this is also something that I've really strived and achieved and delivered on in terms of improving that predictability. So there's a lot of information there. And really sort of thinking about life and sort of, let me just go back, sorry. The improvements, the experiences, and my slides are not playing with me. There's been good, there's been bad, there's been very, mediocre experiences had. It's been challenging for everyone, so we're all working together. It's needed investment in resources within notified bodies, and I'm sure at your company's time as well to train and make sure everyone's on a common approach to it and commitment to delivering the service. There are some still interpretive challenges existing, so I know there's still differences between notified bodies and what they expect to see. But the feedback is important, which is why a session like this is so important to have and hold. And it's important that we all work together to deliver, and I think the Combo group will deliver on that. So Faizan, I have one final ask and one final poll question, please. being mindful of time. Based on what you've heard today, do you feel a little bit more confident in dealing with notified body Article 117 opinions, and you know, does it help? And yeah, it's nice to see there's more confidence in approaching. We are human. We do have a job to do, and we want to hear from you. So a really nice split there. That's good. Brilliant. Thank you for your responses. It's a nice split as a result, and I know you'll. Okay, so now really it is time to hear from you. And guys, are there any questions in the chat or the Q&A?
So we do have quite a few questions in the Q&A section. So first question is from Sam Moses. It's is NBO for combination product is a certificate similar to C? Does it have a validity? And
no, excellent question. That's such a good question. I'll answer that one first. No, it doesn't have a validity. It's a one-off opinion, and you know, yeah, you as the holder of that opinion just need to ensure that changes that you make after that don't impact on the original opinion. We do give a lot of detail in our reports as to what that opinion applies to in terms of the device part. So there's a lot of information provided there. But no, it's a one-off opinion. No end date, but obviously we date the front of it to say this is the date which we applied this opinion to the company. It's a really excellent question.
So next question is from Sam Moses and Sudarshan Reddy. So they are asking, does the co-packed kit like vial, SWFI, PSI, empty syringe, vial adapter, does it require NBOp certificate?
So just read that. So it's going to be co-packaged with the product. If I've understood correctly, I would say no. If it's going to be co-packaged, the combo group will work on that as well. But at this minute in time, if something is just co-packaged, I suppose it depends. It should have the CE mark on it, so it's a syringe perhaps that should be CE marked in its own right. But we are very much aware that the EMA need to look, and we want to publish more guidance around co-packaging or cross-labeling. But from my understanding of the question, that sounds like it's a medical device in its own right, and it needs to be CE marked in its own right as a device.
So again, in continuation to the question, Sudarshan has asked, what is the procedure for informing the NB for about the revised PFS per TUB quantity?
Okay, excellent. There we have a process in place, as you'd imagine. So you have your point contact within the notified body, your scheme manager, and you would say, well, look, we think this is a change. This is the information we give you about the change. Can we have a new opinion, please, as a result of the change? So yeah, there's a little process and communication. So even though it's a one-off procedure, what we see is a lot of companies do come back to us to get, when changes are made, to get opinions and updates to the notified body opinion through our change process. And that's absolutely fine. we leverage past reports and use that as our basis, and then we just really focus in and drill in on the changes that are made and the impacts on GSPRs.
So next question is from Tido Eager. The slide suggests that pharma companies apply for the NBOp. However, in some cases, it is CDMOs or partner who apply. That is not the MAA. Can you please comment whether this changes anything?
Okay, and normally it's normally the majority we see are the marketing authorization applicants. We just need to understand who is going to be submitting that opinion to the competent authority. So it's fine for the CDMO to or partner to apply, but we need to have visibility on who the marketing authorization applicant is, because ultimately that's the party, the legal entity that's responsible for this product as a whole and will be making that application to the competent authority. So we need to have that visibility and linkage, if you like, through there. So it's fine for somebody to apply, but we'll be asking questions on, well, who's the MA going to be? Because we need that information in the opinion so that the competent authority, can see that it is linked to a particular application. So it doesn't change anything much. It's just having visibility, and we'll need to understand a little bit more. But a great question.
So next question is from Vinod KP. Is spring-driven auto-injector considered as active device since the mechanical spring force is involved to initiate the drug delivered by the user?
Fantastic question. And in short, yes, it is considered an active device. Now, I kind of go barely active because it's a spring, but it is having that action. So it is considered in that. As part of our assessment, we would include somebody who has the technical codes for spring loaded, spring activated type of devices in the assessment team. And within our team, we have people who are coded for this. So we do see quite a few of these, but it is considered an active devices. Yeah. It's not reliant on purely the human force. It's the spring. But really great question.
So next question is from Ganesh Kumar. Does a NBOp is mandatory for a variation filling if there is no change in device constitute part or function and only change is related to drug related for say from low concentration to high concentration of drug?
Okay, so the variation, they're not mandatory that you get a notified body opinion for every variation you undertake or have to submit to the competent authority. I would say just consider, so the device is still the same, but does that change in the concentration of drug? Does it change the viscosity perhaps? Does it change the forces that are need to activate the device? So think all the way through. It sounds like potentially, and notified bodies are well known for saying case by case. So it depends. We say a lot as well. So just consider all the options in that. I would wonder, high concentration of drug, is it going to affect the deliverability potentially? So is viscosity changed, or does all that stay the same? And just work through all the potential impacts on that notified body opinion and what that GSPR checklist says. But absolutely, it's not mandatory for variation filings to have a new notified body opinion. Just expect to maybe defend that to the competent authority if you haven't.